So, hi everybody, my name is Noreen. As Jim said, I'm from Western Care Association in Mayo. We're a disability services provider. My topic this morning to talk to you about is community inclusion, a community inclusion perspective, so where social farming fits into that. As part of that, I'm hoping to share some stories with you from participants from Western Care who took part in social farming over the last year. Unfortunately, people couldn't travel with us today, but instead of that, they have shared with me their photographs, their comments, and also helped me put the presentation together. So and they've given me permission to tell you their story. So I hope that kind of captures what they would have said if they were here. So Western Care Association exists to empower people with a wide range of learning and associated disabilities in Mayo to live full and satisfied lives as equal citizens. That's the mission statement of our organisation. We're established since 1966. We're the main disability provider in Mayo, and we would support up to 1,000 people of all ages across the county. As an organisation, I suppose the values that we work on and strive towards is we're person-centred. We'd operate individual plans for each person. We'd strive for inclusion and community connections, main focus of the work. My own background is in service delivery. I would have worked for over 20 years in Western Care itself, mainly in service delivery of day services and residential services. In more recent years, I've taken on community inclusion to work throughout the organisation to develop a strategy as to how best to do that. So one of the most important things we talk about when we talk about community inclusion is that sense of belonging. And to have a sense of belonging is as important to us humans as food and water. Belonging comes with feeling of being valued, of contributing to our society, and connecting with people with shared interest. This is not always the case for people with intellectual disability. Therefore, it's vital to support people to take on valued social roles in communities and to change the image, if possible, of what people can do. Community groups and service providers need to work together to achieve this. As part of that work, we try to work with a wide range of community groups. That would be our local development companies, Feroga, GMIT, the family resource centres, volunteer centres, and all community groups across the county. Try and connect managers and their teams and people who use our services to get more involved with all of these groups. So we talk about community a lot, and we talk about community inclusion, but what do we really mean when we talk about community? So community is made up of yourself and all the people who live in your parish, in your town, in your city, in your locality. You live there with your neighbours and your friends and your families. It thrives on interdependent relationships with people who talk to each other, who listen to each other, and who help each other. It's a place where you can call on a neighbour for help, or where a neighbour can call on you for help. It's a place where you feel welcome, you feel safe, and it includes people from different backgrounds and different cultures. It includes people with different abilities and different skills. It includes places where the community get together to meet each other, to celebrate with each other, like community centres and sports fields and community gardens and so on. To be truly included in your community, it's not just enough to be physically present. You need to be actively engaged and contributing to that community. I think it would be very difficult for any of us to experience an ordinary, everyday life if we weren't included in our community. So your community should be a place where you feel that you truly belong and where you can truly flourish. And I think farms are one of those places. So the role of social farming in intellectual disability is based on the fact that it's person-centred. It gives opportunity to develop social roles for people. It certainly broadens people's networks. We talked earlier about the importance of relationships. I think this is probably the key for us in terms of why we do social farming. The relationships that have built up with farmers and their families, with neighbours, with co-workers, have been invaluable to people. And the relationships are the part that you can't give to people. You have to expose people to new environments and new networks. It certainly gives a sense of belonging to something that's bigger and outside of your typical service day. And as Aisling mentioned earlier, it reconnects people with their rural backgrounds. We'd have had a number of people in our organisation who would have been born and raised on farms, but later in life came to live within services, in group homes, probably in the bigger towns, and lost that connection. So this has been a great way to reconnect people back to that. So how did we get involved in social farming? Just to maybe recap on how did that happen? So I suppose it was something I was aware of for some time, something I was very interested in. I'd heard about SOFA, but didn't know a lot about it. Back in November 2015, we would have had Southwest Mayo Development Company would have organised a seminar in Brafey on social farming and invited Leitrim and other people to come and tell us all about it. And Narita Clesham was one of the main organisers of that. And I really feel that was the day in Mayo that social farming became real for us. And certainly on that day, there was a room like this, and most people there were hearing about social farming for the first time. And there was a huge appetite, a huge interest in the room, service providers, farmers, future participants that we didn't realise at the time. And so I think that's where it began. Later on from there, because of that interest, there was a committee established in Mayo, and I was really glad to get involved with that. That has moved on now and has become a regional committee, so there's other members. My colleague Michael Greeley there from Rosity Charity has joined us from Roscommon, and so we've broadened the network beyond Mayo to a regional committee. Then we also later became part of the National Social Farming Project, and then the development worker Margaret Leahy was employed in Mayo. Margaret has done Trojan work as part of that, and so she was probably key when she came into the role to moving it forward for all of us. And as a service provider, so social farming was new, so we were trying to figure it all out and how it would work. So it's very important to have that support network and to have people from the likes of the development companies, the regional committees, the development workers, and the National Farming Office, because we need to learn together. We need to share the progress and share the problems and share the learning as we go along. So, like I said, we're involved with social farming for about a year now, just coming up in May. And that sounds, oh yeah, we started in May, but actually the placement started in May. We would have started a long time before that in terms of planning and how we were going to do this. Initially, I suppose I would have brought back the information to the organisation, and we created like an intern. We had to get internal commitments. So before we began to offer this to anybody, we had to be sure that the organisation was committed and that they wouldn't fall down at the beginning stages. We talked to people. We had an expression of interest that we just created ourselves internally, and we would do this through what we call individual planning through the IP process. So that's like a form of person-centred planning. So to make sure that everybody, it was given a real choice, that it wasn't us selecting people, that it was genuinely coming through evidence of people's goals in their plans. So that was where we started. Once we, I have to say that once we asked people to express interest internally, the interest was far greater, and the list was way longer of potential participants than it was of farms. So we kind of knew that right from the beginning the interest was greater than what we could probably offer or what would be available from farms in the area. Well, we just waited to see, I suppose, at that point we didn't know where the farms were going to be. So we waited to match people later based on interest and geographical area as well. We also had to make sure, we worked through the local day services manager. That's how we do it. So managers and staff had to be prepared to do this as well, and the kinds of things that they would have to do in terms of risk management planning and in terms of preparation, farm visits, going out to the farms, as Teresa said as well. That, like, the preparation is, you can't do enough preparation before you get to the farm. Support plans had to be done. Transport had to be arranged. In fairness, okay, I mean, I know transport comes up as an issue. It wasn't a huge issue for us. I suppose that's probably because most of the farms we work with are quite close to our services, and we would have our own transport. Some people have their own cars that their support staff drive, so that wasn't a huge issue. So then we got to me. Initially, we worked with two farmers, and Paul McGuire's here today, which is one of our research farms. They were the first two. Westport and Partry were the first two. Later on, we had two more farms in the second stage of the year, in Kelchma and in Hollymount. Paul is available afterwards in terms of answering any further questions, because I won't do justice to everything that Paul does. But in total, last year we did 10 placements across 4 farms. So this is my map to show you where those farms might be. So just outside of Westport and just outside of Kelchma, and between Claremorris and Ballinrobe, and in Partry. The good thing about this was that we would have services in all of those areas. And in actual fact, in Kelchma, the farm almost runs parallel to our own service, so it's really close by. So definitely, transport's not an issue there. You could nearly walk. So that was really good. But what was interesting was they hadn't connected before this, even though they were actually neighbours. So that was really interesting. That it was so close by and people hadn't connected, but now they do. So I just want to tell you, not all of the placements, but just the people who did ask me to, or who gave me their photographs to share with you. So this is Kelchma. This is our Kelchma farm. This gentleman is Val. Initially, Val would have had a huge interest in horticulture previously, and would have completed horticulture courses in the past, but hadn't really gone on to do anything with that. So the social farming for him was actually progression based on learning he'd done previously. So he was able to put that into operation here on this farm. And initially he would have had staff support, but just for the first couple of weeks probably. And after that he goes there, he just gets dropped off and collected. I know for Val, one of his favourite parts of the day is definitely the tea break. On this farm, neighbours do come in to help out on the farm as well. It's quite a busy farm, and they all sit around a tea and share lots of stories, and it's definitely the highlight for Val on this one. This is the same farm, so there's 2 people together on this farm. Aaron does actually have a support staff with him on this farm. This photograph is Aaron potato picking, and it's something that he had never done before and took him a while to settle in to do. It's something that takes a while for him, but he has learned a lot by doing it. But if you see in the photograph, you'll notice that the quality control here is really very good. This is Aaron as well. Aaron is here in the tunnels again, this time with the tomatoes. And he absolutely loves to take the produce back with him. And the second photo, as you can see, is making lunch later from work he had done in the morning. So that's been something new for him as well. So this is Westport. Westport, this gentleman, again, this gentleman, Jerry, actually was the very first social farming placement in Mayo. We weren't quite sure how that would work out for him either, because he doesn't use words to communicate. However, the bond and the relationship that is formed between Jerry and the farmer here, Chris, they understand each other perfectly. And Chris has gotten to know him extremely well, and now does understand lots of things that Jerry will show him and teach him. So again, this is a farm where lots of harvesting happens. They would supply produce to country markets in Westport. So there's a lot of harvesting and a lot of packing to prepare for markets. And for Jerry, I think one of the key progressions here for him has been moving on to meeting Chris in the country markets the following day. So he actually sees the produce that he has packed the previous day, and then on the following day he actually sees people buy it in the country market. So that's been really, that was a new element to it that came later. Again, Jerry is now attending here on his own. He doesn't have any support staff with him either. Okay, so we'll just move on to Partry Farm. So this is Paul's farm. And this farm has been, but we're on a 3rd placement actually on Paul's farm. This gentleman is Peter. So So there's a lot of different activities happen here. And this particular image, I suppose, is Peter loves physical work. So the two gentlemen are quite different in terms of what they like to do and the amount of time or the physicality. That's quite varied. So Paul's very good at setting people up to do the level of work that's right for that person. So it's not the two people doing the same thing. They're doing the particular thing that's of interest to them and that suits them. So there's stone wall work. There's planting. It's quite varied. So you can see there's photography happening as well. Just an interest of Paul's, which he has shared. So it's just a new element. So to take photographs of the work that they've been involved in, so they have their own records of that. Paul is also a gifted carpenter, and so he has been teaching people as well some carpentry skills. And so these are activities that can happen on a wet day. So you have the option. There's always something to do regardless of the weather. So one of the things they were doing was making bird boxes, which they also then put up around the farm. And this is John. John has been with Paul for quite some time now, and they have also formed a very strong relationship. And I know certainly John misses Paul when he's not on the farm. And so again, you can see there's planting and carpentry. And here John is involved. This was back just before Christmas, so part of some of the skills that they would have learned around the carpentry, and that they produced Christmas cribs. And brought them back to the service and so on. So again, John enjoys the planting. And there's the cribs again. And John also has been get involved in the photography as well. So such a wide variety of things that can happen. So it's just going back to the point that no two farms are the same. And that's good because no two people are the same. So we need that wide variety of things that people can get involved in. That's John again. John gave me lots of photos. Okay, so benefits for people. I was asking people about this and what they kind of felt, and I know Aisling has picked it up in the research as well, but just having local conversations with people. Definitely new relationships have formed, relationships that wouldn't have happened if people hadn't gotten involved in social farming. Huge amount of new skills, things like the photography or the carpentry, but it's even the planting, like skills that people might not have had an opportunity to take part in outside of service before. The relaxed pace really suits people, and I think that's very important. There isn't that pressure to do things. It's very well gauged at the pace of the person who's there. So that's important. Community connections, obviously that has probably been the key point for everybody who has taken part in it. It's healthy, it's outdoors, there are sensory benefits for people, certainly has broadened the network, and it's an additional option from the day service. And I say option because there are a range of options that people get involved in, and I suppose we work right across. I suppose we strive to provide as many options as possible for people in the community, and people's lives can be very, very busy. And I know for one person, while they were really enjoying social farming, at one stage they were finding it hard to fit it in because they were so busy. So that's, it's not like people that there's nothing else happening, but it's about finding the right match for people. And so some people have, while we did 10 placements last year, 2 people have chosen not to continue, and that's actually through people just being so busy. So it wasn't that they didn't enjoy social farming, it's just that they've moved on to other things. So some of the challenges that they mentioned to me then as well is about, the sampling placements are short for some people. So we kind of felt that 10 weeks, they really felt it probably, if they did the second placement, it probably took them till 13, 14 weeks before you really saw a difference, a significant change for people, and that they felt completely comfortable. I mentioned busy schedules, so that can be, and it takes time to settle in. This one is interesting because I suppose the way we've been working it is between 10-week placements and then a break and then 10-week placements. The gap is a problem for some people because it's based on relationships, because it's based on something outside of service in the community. People found that it's hard to wait for the new placement to start. And one of the examples, and I've told this story to other people, is about Jerry on the Westport farm. Even though he knew when we finished the farm and placement just before Christmas, with the agreement we'd start in springtime, because that's kind of a natural time to begin again, and he would have known that. But every Wednesday morning, in between, he still brought his boots and his gloves to the centre, hoping that was the day. Even though he knew, but he still tried to hurry us up to make March come a bit quicker, I think. So from a service provider point of view, there are a number of benefits and challenges also. It is a really, really good option for people in day service. It's an alternative on that 1 day a week that's meaningful, that fits right in with person-centeredness and planning. So we feel that we can be responsive to people if that is something that they identify that they want to do. Certainly fits with New Directions policy. It's been referred to a number of times. And it's of benefit to us to have the support network that I mentioned earlier, because service providers need some reassurance, some support in terms of progression. There's also some challenges. I suppose we worry about the long-term uncertainty of it. So at the moment we're just planning for this year, for 2018, and at the moment there's no guarantee beyond that. We hope there will be, but we need to work on that. Funding is mentioned too. It's the same for us, as Teresa mentioned. Staff support, busy centres, transport. It can be a challenge in terms of just availability, but we've managed to overcome that. We mentioned commissioning. Moving towards that, we have to figure that out. And location. I suppose what I mean by location is you're just limited to where, so you might have people interested in one part of the county, but there isn't a farm there. So that's just what that means. So that was 2017, those 10 placements. This year, we're saying we're committed to the ongoing social farming, and that's simply based on the feedback from the participants and the people that have taken part so far. So this is something I just wanted to share with you, because one of the things I've been saying right from the beginning is when I heard and got involved in social farming was my concern would be that if something is based on relationships and people have formed bonds, how you can't take that away. So if it's not something that you're committed to, don't offer it and then take it back again. You have to find a way to make that happen for people. So just back to I'll leave you with a quote from Eleanor Roosevelt, but it's about, if you talk about community inclusion and you talk about things happening in ordinary places, I like this quote for that. So it's, where after all do universal human rights begin? In small places, close to home. So close and so small that they cannot be seen in any maps of the world. Such are the places where every man, woman and child seeks equal justice, equal opportunity, equal dignity without discrimination. Unless these rights have meaning there, they have little meaning anywhere. Thank you.